Welcome back to another Fantasy Puck video, guys. It's Chris. Today, I'm going to be talking about must-avoid elite players. These are guys that are perceived as being elite or are going in an elite range in this year's upcoming fantasy hockey season, but we believe that you guys should completely avoid. So you'll see some big name players on this list, and you'll see some pretty good projections for them based off the past two seasons. But again, we believe that you should avoid these players in your guys' drafts. But before we get into the video, guys, if you have not signed up for our fantasy hockey Patreon leagues and you're interested in playing in a more premium fantasy hockey experience, please do so. They're filling up very, very fast. Not a lot of spots left, so be sure to sign up, guys. A link will be in the description down below, as well as thank you guys so much for all the support lately. We have so much content coming your guys' way throughout the entire month of September and in towards this upcoming fantasy hockey season. That being said, guys, let's get right into the video. Starting off our video, guys, I have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins of the Edmonton Oilers. I might get some pushback on this, but I've been pretty adamant about how I feel about Nuge. If you've been joining our mock drafts or our live streams, I just don't believe in the 104-point season, especially the 33 goals. He had a huge jump in shooting percentage, over 18%, guys, where his career average is around 12. 37 goals seems absolutely absurd to me, which is what he had last season. And I like, if you want to draft Nuge, I understand why. He's elite when it comes to power play points, but you know, for me, it's just he doesn't do enough to justify taking him in the third or fourth round. You look at the rest of his categories and his shot volume is average at best. He doesn't hit, he doesn't block really too much from a forward's perspective. He doesn't really score a lot to begin with either, even though our projections do have him for 83 points in 73 games. This is because of the fact that we use a weighted average, and last season's was obviously weighted the highest. So for me, I just don't buy it. He's been under a point a game over the past 2-3 years. The third year in 2019-2020, he had 61 points in 65 games with 22 goals, but that's still along his career average in terms of shooting percentage. And for me, like, I just don't see the benefit to drafting him here, especially with guys around like Timo Meier. He's in the Tim Stützle range. JT Miller's a great pick in that range as well, too, guys. He just doesn't do enough for me to take him over one of these guys, even if he's around a point a game. Up next, we have Kris Letang of the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm pretty hesitant about Erik Karlsson as well this year, but I decided to pick Letang over him just for a couple reasons, guys. Like, number one, like, Letang is usually a great defenseman to have, especially in the peripherals category if your league counts hits and blocks. So why would I be off a guy like this? I really just don't think people understand how much of an impact Erik Karlsson is going to have on Letang. Erik Karlsson led all defensemen in total time on ice last season. Now, I don't think that's going to impact Letang too much. Just number one, Karlsson was on San Jose and they really just couldn't play any defensemen that much. And number two, a lot of teams are able to find a way to work around two elite defensemen and get them around 22, 23 minutes a night, even if they do play the same position. Look at guys like Hedman and Sergachev last year, for example. I have two major concerns with Letang. Number one, there's an obvious drop in power play time. And with Letang, 51% of his points came from the power play last season. That is a lot, guys. And for him to be just completely getting dropped off that first power play, I'm a little bit hesitant for his point totals. And then the second one is he is a major injury risk. He was born with a small hole on the wall of his heart. This is something that's been, known pretty commonly when it comes to Letang. He's suffered 2 strokes now because of it, which is insane. Fingers crossed that he doesn't have a third one. That would be terrible. Even if the strokes and the thing with his heart doesn't scare you enough, he's had continuous upper and lower body injuries dating back to 2019, and he's now going to be 36 years old going into this season, guys. There's just a lot of risk involved for me with Letang, so I'm completely off of him this year. I think his ADP reflects the risk of his injuries. I wouldn't be surprised to see some people in the comments being like, even if Letang, gets top 4 minutes, he's still going to be good in his peripherals. He's still going to have a good amount of blocks, good amount of hits. And for me, like, that's justifiable, but I just think his point totals are going to take such a hit that I would much rather take other defensemen in this range. Up next, guys, I have Evgeny Kuznetsov of the Washington Capitals. I was never really a huge Kuzi fan to begin with in fantasy because of his lower goal totals and power play totals along with his average shot volume. And he doesn't really hit on top of that. So for me, like, Kuzi was just kind of like a Matt Barzal type player where, like, he was just more of a playmaker. But he really dropped off for me this year. 55 points in 81 games. We have him projected for something similar. The other thing with Kuznetsov is he normally, would see time with Ovi a lot of the time, but he ended up losing that job to Dylan Strome last season, which probably reflects his power play totals. And on top of all this, guys, he wants a trade out of Washington, which could excite some people, and I think it's an interesting thing to look into, so I did. But you got to remember, guys, is there realistically a situation where Kuznetsov gets traded to a team and he is the solidified #1 center? I did some digging on this, and I think there's only one, maybe two teams that he could be traded to where he would see a drastic change in his fantasy value. The first team is Boston, obviously the fact that they're missing a #1 center in general. And the second one is Minnesota. They normally don't have an elite #1 centerman. Jeek, to me, is just like a middle six guy, probably a second line center. He's solid when he's there, but to me, he's not a #1 center. And if Kuznetsov ends up going to one of those teams, he's playing with an elite winger in Kaprizov or Pasternak. So I think those are really the only two situations. Everywhere else, he's pretty much a bona fide second line center, and he will continue to see similar ice time and production to what he is last season. And I know crazier things have happened with trades. Some trades just completely revitalize a player's career. See Sam Bennett, for example. But until something like that actually happens and I see a massive increase in production from Kuznetsov, I'm just completely avoiding him. Mark Stone is up next, guys, and that might be the most Mark Stone photo I've ever seen. Guy loves scoring goals, even though he doesn't do it quite too much. Congrats to him, first of all, for winning the Stanley Cup. Well-deserved. But that is an insane ADP for Mark Stone, a guy that could realistically only play around a half season for the rest of his career due to his chronic back injury. He's had issues with this in the past. He's going to continue to have this issue going forward. I would not personally draft a guy in the first 5 rounds that could realistically only see 50 games from now on. There's so much risk involved with that altogether. Even when he's healthy, he's not necessarily a fantasy stud. He's usually around a point a game, but doesn't really typically have high goal totals. Last year, he had 17 goals in 43 games and 21 assists for 38 points, which is, like I said, around a point a game. He's usually under 170 shots. He doesn't really hit. He doesn't really block. So again, he's an elite player in real life, but in fantasy hockey with so much risk involved, especially with his injury going forward, I'm just not taking a chance on this guy whatsoever. I'm completely avoiding him, and I recommend you guys do too, especially given his ADP. And finishing up our video, guys, we have Sergei Bobrovsky of the Florida Panthers, another guy that's kind of victim to some recency bias. I just did not believe what I was seeing at some points in the playoffs last season. He was so good, but ultimately regressed in the finals. And guys, we got to remember that, like, we're looking at a full regular season here for Bob. And over the past 2 seasons, he has had a starter's role in Florida, playing 50 games last season. The year before, he had 54 games where he had a crazy good season in 2021-22 with 39 wins, 7 losses, and a .913 save percentage. But last season, he ultimately regressed a little bit back to what he's normally been over the past 3 of 4 seasons, where he had 24 wins, a .901 save percentage, and a .307 goals against average. An average goaltender with below average stats when it comes to save percentage and wins now. And either he's going to continue on this trend or he's likely going to become a 1B, as I anticipate that Spencer Knight, if he's healthy and if he's going good in camp, can come out and take the starting role or at least take a 50-50 split from Bob going forward. So for me, I'm avoiding Bob altogether because of the recency bias. And look at that ADP, guys. I just think there's so many good goalies beyond that you should take over Bobrovsky. I understand the starting volume is a big thing, but similar situation to what I said with Binnington in my must-avoid players video. For me, Bobrovsky is just on the decline, and I'm avoiding him this season. That is going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like and hit that subscribe button. Like I said, we have a ton of content coming, as well as, guys, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. Is there anybody that you're just completely off of this year? Is there anybody that, you know, think you're like, this guy's completely overrated, I'm not drafting him, or I really don't like this guy because of this reason? Let me know in the comments down below. I love hearing your guys' opinions. And also let me know if I'm just completely off on some people. The one where I think, you know, I could get the most kind of pushback for is probably Nugent-Hopkins. Even if he, like I said, has a good season, I just don't think he's justifiable taking in the range that he's in, but I could understand why some people would want him due to his elite power play totals. But thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video. Have yourselves a fantastic rest of the day.